Hope y'all have had a great day. Awesome power, boundless grace.
And we're grateful at a time like this where so many people have noticed that our universe is so complex, that there is so much about it that we don't know. It's so much greater than we have ever imagined, that now we know, not just those who have always believed you, but even those who have doubted, Father, are aware that there must be a God behind all this, and that you, Father, are indeed our God. Father, be with us and help us in a generation like this to point to you, that more and more people might have the same kind of hope that we have. And be with our brethren throughout the world, Father, that they might continue to stand for the truth, for our brethren in the Ukraine who are going through so much right now, and our brethren whose lives are at stake constantly in Nigeria from Muslim attacks. Father, we pray that choices might be made by our president, by our nation and others, that their lives might be spared, that they might continue to do what they have done, Father, in bringing so many people, not just in Nigeria, but so many people throughout Africa, to the truth of the gospel. Father, be with us, be with your people all throughout the planet. And be with us now, Father, as we study your word, and help us to always be focused on what you would have us to do. In Jesus' name we ask. Amen.
It said good morning earlier to Reed, Trevor, and Adeline. And so I guess you guys can tell what kind of day I've been having. But despite that, it's always a pleasure to be up here. Good evening. And another note, yes, my voice sounds deep. I am not faking this. My throat is in pain, but I am no longer sick. It's on the back end of it. It's what happens when you talk while you're sick. But let's turn our Bibles to Judges chapter 3. Judges chapter 3. I'm going to ask that Ryan click on the second picture, the one labeled the Tytler cycle. Thank you. There's a lot of discussion over the happenings, the events that are occurring overseas. They're rather heartbreaking, and I've been reflecting on them quite a bit lately. You see, this has been happening since the first individual was named a Christian. This has been happening since Christ walked the earth. There's been persecution, people being dragged out of their homes and killed for believing in him. And it's stuff we really, things we really don't have to worry about here. Yet, as I've been reflecting on this, something hit me really hard. And that is that we're not really that far off from something like that happening. And I think that some of the facial expressions and some of the thoughts that's probably crossed your mind is pretty telling as to how close we are to something like that being very possible within our environment. One second. Yes, sir. He's going to pull up the Tytler cycle, and in that you're going to see something that is very familiar. I know all of you have studied at some point or another the rise and the fall of Israel countless times, the cycle of apostasy. We're going to observe that in Judges chapter 3. Before we do, I do want to note that there was a billion-dollar company, I'm sure you've heard of them, named BlackRock. And this company quoted a World Economic Forum writer and stated, "You will own nothing and be happy." BlackRock stated this, or at least they backtracked and said that they stated it as an inevitability. Either way, it's a warning. And that is that we're a lot closer to the idea of bondage than we realize. And if you notice in this cycle, we have faith. Thank you very much, brother. We have courage. We have liberty. We have abundance. We have selfishness, complacency, apathy, and dependence. Now, I'm going to treat you all like adults and assume that you know the definition of these words, with the exception of apathy. A reason being is because, based on my observations, not only as a Christian, as a human being, and as a clinician, I would say that's probably where we are right now, is apathy. And that is, all responsibility is not ours, it is someone else's. We are in a state of just not really, how do I say this? I think that's it. I'm not going to overcomplicate it. It's just we're passing the buck, right? And then dependence. Now in society, economy, we see dependence come where we decide to relegate or just basically give up our rights to those of a higher power than our own. And of course, that's subjective. The only higher power than our own is God himself. Yet for some reason, over time, whether that be property, whether that be your time, whether that be any of your goods, we've made the decision to give them up. And it's very telling where we are. Now, we're not that close. We're not that far from bondage. We see this, a perfect example of this is the way we bind ourselves to debt, right? Instead of living below our means, being good stewards with our money, we decide we have to have the thing. And it speaks to, look, we've passed selfishness. And so I brought this cycle to bring it back to him. Through the cycle of apostasy, if you will. While we're reading Judges 3, Ryan, I would love if you pulled that cycle up next, so we're not here all night. Judges 3, verses 7 to 11 state, "So the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Asheroths. Therefore the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the hand of Cushing-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia. And the children of Israel served Cushing-Rishathaim 8 years. When the children of Israel cried out to the Lord raised up a deliverer for the children of Israel, who delivered them, Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he judged Israel. He went out to war. And the Lord delivered Cushing-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia, into his hand, and his hand prevailed over Cushing-Rishathaim. So the land had rest for 40 years. Then Othniel, the son of Kenaz, died." I'm sure there's a lot of technical difficulties because of my difficulties I have imparted upon Ryan. So while we are waiting for him to put that cycle up patiently, might I add, I appreciate what y'all do. The cycle's kind of obvious in Judges chapter 3. And a lot of times as Christians, we can distance ourselves from the story. And we forget that the story is still very much applicable to our own lives. And that is, we live in faith, we're courageous, we're free free in him, free in God, free in Christ. And with that freedom, with that liberty, comes abundance. We have plenty. All of our needs are met, right? Because if you're a spiritual being, then there's not really much that you need. Well, then we start to think to ourselves, that's not enough anymore. So we get selfish, and then we get overly comfortable, and we'll complain about, well, just about anything. And we'll hold on to that one little thing until it turns into a million little things, and it takes away from the one big thing, and that is God. And so in that complacency, in that apathy, we lose our way. In that selfishness, we lose our way. And like the Israelites, yeah, God doesn't just outright deliver us into the hands of the Babylonians or the Mesopotamians or anything like that. But man, if God didn't know what he was doing, he revealed to us a key, and that is he doesn't have to deliver you into the hands of someone. You'll do it yourself. This is the inevitability of choosing to live a life without him. And so, yeah, you will willingly and openly give yourself up to the rulers that be, because they maybe believe 5 things that you do, and we'll give them the authority to take all of our things away until we're in bondage. And we'll smile for a bit, and then by some way, shape, or form, God will reveal himself through you, through someone, through a group, and we'll find our faith again. Now that might sound discouraging, but it's also supposed to be very hopeful. And that is that we can stretch this cycle out, or we can make decisions today so that we can maybe break that cycle, at least for your generation and for mine. So today I ask, my observations mean very little. I know there are probably people in here that are saying you're 30 years old, you know little to nothing. So I ask, as we're looking at this cycle, where do you think we are? Now, if you're having trouble, because I like taking big things and making them small, Alexander Tytler was referenced by an individual named Hayek. And in his book, Road to Serfdom, he had said that the most valuable weapon against, and I don't know what your beliefs are, and we would be here forever if I tried to break this down, but the biggest weapon against bondage, against socialism, against, if you believe that, fine, totalitarianism, the biggest weapon against that is the individual. The biggest weapon against that is what you decide to do for yourself and for your home, whether or not you choose to serve God or choose an idol or choose the state or choose your country. If you choose God, all that will fall into place. If any of this applies to you, if maybe you're not following him and you find yourself falling into this cycle in your own life, or you're wondering, how can I be a part of Christianity? Well, you referenced that earlier. What does that mean to do that? Well, this is the opportunity. Please come as we together stand and sing the song of invitation.
Somebody's hardcore. I like that. Anybody not here last week that needs a thing? Before you laugh, our house is completely exposed. You know, we get all the sun all day long. So if any of y'all want to donate some solar panels, I'd be grateful. We're, when you open this, we're on a section, too bad I didn't number the pages, huh? It would be the backside. It has, well, you know, I'd probably need to be looking at mine to get it right. How would I even, the first word at the top is evil. That's great, ain't it? Yeah, first word is evil, comma, then why is evil in the world? That's the page we're on, and we're down at, we'll go ahead and start with point 1 at the bottom there. It says, in light of this, we talked about, I guess we need to back it up. Did you need one, Johnny? I'm sorry. Oh, I got another one here. It starts off by love allows freedom of choice. And so that was the basis of their argument. God he didn't make us as mindless robots that just simply have to do what he has us programmed to do. But we have a choice. And in order for us to have a choice, there has to be the possibility of making bad choices. And so we went through that. And now we're down at number 1. We said we frequently suffer due to our personal wrong choices. And I think if Felix Lesson said anything, you know, that was what it was pointing to. If a man steals and goes to prison, whose fault is it? Do you even go to prison for stealing anymore? I was thinking that was something we don't even arrest people for anymore, from what I've seen. Maybe that's changing. But I know the penalties sure have changed over the years. And so let's turn to 1 Peter chapter 4. 1 Peter 4, verse 15. It says, but let none of you suffer as a murderer. In other words, don't suffer as somebody who deserves it, or as a thief, or an evildoer, or a busybody in other men's matters. Yet if any man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed. But if you're suffering because of what you brought upon yourself, well, that's what they call life, right? Those serious life lessons, which all of us need, don't we? And you, those are the lessons that stick with you, the ones you actually go through, and you get that taste in your mouth, and you're going like, oh man, what have I done? Anybody ever bought a lemon? And I'm not talking about in the produce, I'm talking about on the car lot. Oh man, I had the most beautiful little I think it was an 85 Oldsmobile Calais. Didn't have a whole lot of miles on it, but man, it was nice. But I traded it in on a Grand Am that had a lot less miles. You know, Candace, I'm doing the right thing, right? Getting lower in those miles, you know. What they don't tell you is that when they engineered that motor, they didn't leave enough room between the side of the engine and the water port. And so it was notorious for blowing head gaskets, which in turn, if you're not paying very careful attention, what will a blowed head gasket lead to? Blowed head. You know, you're going to have it remachined. And that was me. I had to pay Capital Toyota $2,000 to take that car. But now I got a Camry, and I never looked back, man. I was Toyota all the way. Anyway, that was a lesson learned. Bought it from an elder in the church. I said, boy, you know, he said, you're not accusing me of doing bad business, are you? And I said, you had no idea. You bought that, you know, he had, anyway. Long story short, I learned a lesson there. You know, you got to pay attention. You got to know a little bit about cars if you're going to buy them used, right? And guys, in my defense, because I'm looking back there at the grocers, and he's looking at me with disdain, like, how could you do that? We didn't have Google back then, you know. You couldn't just Google it up, or Carfax. What's that, the little fox? The Carfax, you know, he's the representative for Carfax. We didn't have those. But something should have told me. I ain't even going to tell you how stupid I am. But anyway, okay, I got to tell you. I'm going down the road, and that mile thing keeps clicking, but it don't turn over. It's clicking, but it don't turn over. There's no telling how many miles that car had on it. And so I took it back to him and said, okay, anyway, it was my fault. Number 2, but we learned from that. Much suffering is a consequence of other people's freedom of choice. I used to coach softball, right? Coached a lot of girls, and last time I coached high school girls. It was in South Pittsburgh, and I don't know, I'd probably coached that team like 6 years. And what scared me was when I went in to vote, Johnny, some of those girls I had coached were in there with me. I knew they didn't know which side the sun came up on, you know, and I'm going like, we're all equals in this? Man, I'll tell you what, I think you ought to be 25 and be a landholder in order to be able to vote. Let me tell you. Hey, some people, they can't come out of the rain, and yet they got just as much right as you do. And do they make mistakes? Oh, yeah. Well, sometimes we won't even get into the, you know, automobile accidents and just people acting stupid in their cars, and, you know. So, yeah, sometimes we get hurt because other people are exercising their free choice. An innocent party may be killed in a wreck involving a drunken driver. We sometimes pay the price for others' freedom of choice. And, you know, you can't help but think maybe the government's got a little bit to do with that. But, you know, what does the government do? They do what we tell them to do, right? For the most part, the reason the blue laws went by the wayside was not because the government thought, hey, you know, as a whole, we elect them. What they heard was us saying, we want to get drunk on Sunday mornings, and don't you stand in our way. We want to be able to buy alcohol 24/7. And so we'd like for you to put it in the grocery stores. We want liquor licenses everywhere. As a matter of fact, how long is it going to be before they offer it as a condiment on the school buses? You know, I just wonder. Because we've already, you know, we kind of laugh at that. But we're selling it at collegiate football stadiums where you've got people ain't old enough to wipe their nose hardly. Absolutely amazing to me. Number 3, suffering is frequently the result of the freedom of choice as abused by former generations. Yeah, I don't even want to get into a big debate, but I think one of the worst things that ever happened in this country was the Civil War. Not about how many people died and so forth, but we became a welfare warfare state. We had this huge army, and all of a sudden we had to have all this tax. You realize there was not an IRS, there was not a tax system till Abraham Lincoln in the war between the states? And do you realize we've never looked back? And I can tell you right now, I think there's some things that are happening in the government's great, but there's no tax that's ever going to be give back. You know, brethren, every time the taxes go up, do you think the county commission is going to get together and say, boy, we just got too much money? I have been so surprised. Y'all got those checks back from Georgia? Last couple years ago? They were sending us our money back. And I'm going like, why don't you just not take it this time, you know? Usually that's not the case. Usually we lose it forever, don't we? You know, when you see those commercials, and so I usually try to change the channels. You see the little Ethiopian children, remember the CARE, the UNICEF and all those? Don't ever look and see how much of the money you give to UNICEF actually makes it to where it's supposed to go. But you see that, man, your heart goes out, you know, and you're like, boy, we need to do something about that. Do you realize we've been pumping money into those places for years? And I don't know if y'all have ever, read the book or watched any documentaries or anything about Mogadishu and how our soldiers had to absolutely fire upon people to get them to not steal the food that we took. You had the warlords, the gangs, go in there and try to take it and use it as a leverage tool. And so reason so many of those children are starving to death is because the adults there have chosen to use all the money and everything that they can get their hands on to buy guns, to buy ammunition. You know what other thing they like to buy? Drugs. That's how you keep those 14-year-olds in your army. You get them high all day and buy them guns, and all of a sudden they're powerful. And brethren, as Hugh was praying a while ago, first of all, I'd like to say something about Africa. I heard some of the best preaching that I've heard in a long time for some African brethren in our class who were debating. It was an interesting debate because you had to affirm a position, and then you had to debate yourself, but this other guy debated you first, and then you flip-flop. You took the negative. It was some of the best. Those men were highly studied. They were highly ready. Instrumental music and was one of the topics. And then I haven't heard many preachers in Chattanooga that could lay it down as well as this one brother did. And I was like, well, I tell you what, just keep going. Just keep at it. And and what Hugh was talking about with the Muslims there, that's a real deal. And for Trump to threaten to do something about that, that really was, I read his whole quote to those brothers last week, and they were glad to hear that, because in the Muslim sectors, the Christians they can't call the police. You know why? The Muslims, they're the Muslims. You ain't going to get no justice. You can't even get a loan at the bank because the Muslims are running and they don't give Christians loans. But they'll give it to a Muslim. So trying to buy a house and everything, that's real right there, folks. It's about as real as it can get. It says, can we avoid reaping the evils as well? No doubt about it. You just can't do it. Let's continue on. And I'm trying to figure out which way I'm going now. In connection with this point, some additional observations need to be made. Consider, for example, the numerous diseases with which mankind is blighted. Brethren, that's something I didn't know much about. You know, this whole 2020, right? You remember how excited we were about 2020? So many preachers already had their year out, 2020 vision in 2020. Oh, man, back up and punt, right? That came down pretty quick. Things that we just never saw. And so we made some decisions. I think looking back on it now, maybe we would have made some of those decisions a little different. Hindsight's always great, ain't it? But I did not realize until I started reading about COVID, about the AIDS pandemic and how many people, I say pandemic, how many people died from AIDS. And in reality, the ones that didn't take the medication most of the time lived. And the ones that did take the vaccines that were being put out by our government, most of them died. What they don't tell you also is the folks that had so much problem with that had a very low tolerance in their immune system. They already had a very suppressed immune system, and it was because they were already on antibiotics. You know why they were already on antibiotics? STDs. When you have STDs, they give you antibiotics to try to fight that. So the antibiotics beat your immune system down, and then you have something like the AIDS virus attack you. They just didn't have the resolve to build it back. That was a lifestyle. And do you remember how vigorously our country fought saying that? Oh, it's not a lifestyle. You know, anybody can get AIDS, you know. What about that dentist working on that one person, you know? And so we took that one anomaly in the matrix and said, well, okay, we can't say that. But in reality, who were most of the people that died of AIDS? people who were living a very reckless, dangerous lifestyle. And I'm not saying that to gloat or be happy about it. I'm not. I don't want to see people die. But we didn't hear that. And so as a result, you know, and the promiscuity in our country, we have brought that upon ourselves. And maybe not here in Dade County, but you remember when they started passing out condoms in schools? Do you remember that? Sex education and where they would, and I understand the argument. A lot of times they felt the need to step in because parents weren't teaching their kids anything about that. But I think we've taken that just a little bit too far in many instances. Well, sin. Sin causes death. Remember what God told Israel when they came out of Egypt. If you'll do what I tell you, then you won't suffer any of these diseases which were in Egypt. And what he's saying is if you live a monogamous relationship where it's one man, one woman, and you don't have outside marital things and you don't eat certain meats and stuff like that, and when you go to the bathroom, you take care of that properly, you're hygienic, you're constantly washing, you're washing with things that they make lye soap out of, you know, the hyssop, the ashes. And so the purification and stuff they did was basically a precursor to, I mean, how many of y'all thought you was going to lose your flesh during COVID? I mean, man alive, my hands were just ashen from so much, you know, and so Israel was practicing things like that long before anybody even knew what it was. Notice on that next paragraph, also there's abundantly much suffering in the world today because of the consequences of meteorological phenomena, hurricanes, earthquakes. Well, what makes that take place? Notice about halfway down, many scholars believe that the universal flood of Noah's day, Genesis 6 through 8, left behind the conditions which facilitate the occurrence of such phenomena. Had it not been for man's evil, the flood would never have come. The features of the earth would not have been so altered, and man would not be suffering the results therefrom today. What are your thoughts on the canopy? The canopy on the earth, the firmament. Y'all ever looked into that very much? Ever thought about it much? Anybody got any thoughts on it? Well, it sure is now, ain't it? But how did the earth receive its water, apparently, in the beginning? Yeah, from the ground, right? And so when it started raining, people were kind of surprised, right? And boy, did it keep raining. But there had to be a lot of water that normally wasn't here. And a lot of people think there was a vapor, this canopy, that surrounded the earth until the worldwide cataclysmic flood. And do you remember, not only did a lot of water come from the heavens, but where did it also come from? Do you remember? And other things. The fountains of the deep opened up. And so I'm thinking not only water, but what else would you get? Yeah, volcanoes, lava, ash. And so when those volcanoes started giving, I mean, do y'all remember when Mount St. Helens blew and we got part of the, what do you call it? I don't know if do you call it a fallout but you know, it affected our weather pattern for a while because there's so much ash that blocks out the sun's light. And so imagine a whole world where you have all these volcanoes. Now, this is just some very great hypotheses that have been put out there, but apparently the weather is a lot different now than it was in Adam's day as a result of the fall. I could explain a whole lot of things because I don't know about y'all, but I get stuck on them reels. Y'all ever watch them tornadoes they got? I can't believe people actually get in their cars and chase them things down. I see a tornado, I'm going to try to go where I think it's not going. You know, if I want to go the opposite direction. And that's why, have y'all noticed around here it seems we get so many bad weather tornado things during the nighttime. I don't know about y'all, but I'd like to see something coming. But our tornadoes around here, do they look like those in Oklahoma? They don't, do they? Y'all remember that tornado that went through Nashville? They had all that film on. To me, it looked like a fog bank going through there. It didn't have any real kind of rotation that you could, you know how you see the big, like got Dorothy and Toto, right? That's when you see a tornado, that's what you're kind of looking for. But it wasn't. It was just a big mass thing that, and so tornadoes, cyclones, hurricanes, all of these could be a part of, and as Candace said, it's even changing today. And nobody denies that the world's not heating up. But it's been heating up since the Ice Age. It's a gradual thing. So a lot of people are jumping on that. It's kind of we're doing this to this. Listen, folks. Go ahead, Ken. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. We'll just put the Mercy over on this side in case it does break off here, or we can go over there to, that's something, isn't it? When they built the hospital at Fort Stewart, Georgia, this is a true story, not an Army story, I promise you. They couldn't get it to quit sinking. I mean, tons and tons of concrete in there trying to build up that foundation. So it developed, it got the name Fort Swampy. And for good reason, it just kept sinking. I think it's quit now. But anyway, I like what he said about that because, go ahead. Huh. Yeah. That's where we're going next. Yeah. UV rays are pretty rough, ain't they? Yep. Yeah. Nothing. It's not too uncommon to hear people talk about the ladle, or ladle, however you want to say it, frozen in the water bucket next to the fireplace. When the fire go out at night, and we just don't have many temperatures get down that low. Yeah. Well, it's definitely it is and definitely warming up, but enough to, how long is this earth going to be here, you reckon? Till God's done with it. That's right. That's exactly right. And I'm totally okay with that. Yeah. Yeah, what is that, Psalms 90? What is, yeah.
But that's the point I'm trying to make is that was long before we were here, climate change is a thing
Yeah.
like that.
That's right.
I personally believe that God has created this earth for a period of time.
Yeah,
And
agree.
all the things that we experience as part of the earth affects. And you make the best of it
Yeah.
with the knowledge and the wisdom that you have.
Right.
And if you're stupid enough to go use every hurricane coming, probably isn't going to get knocked over to your back.
You know, it's people like Don Henderson that are making all our rates go up. You know, have you ever noticed that? We just had to do a thing for our retirement deal, and looking at that, basically the insurance companies are betting on you to die at a certain age. So they want you to take this money now, and, you know, it's all about, what do you call that? We got an accountant, yeah. He's, you know, so that 70, and okay, maybe 80. Okay, we'll write this out to 80. Then you got a dime. Oh my, it skews it, you know, that anomaly in the matrix. But no, I know we all want to be here as long as we possibly can. But the universal flood, they think Henry Morris there. You see that name, John Whitcomb and Henry Morris. Henry Morris has a commentary on the book of Genesis. It's a really great read. And like Dakota said a while ago, I know all of us are probably familiar with Ken Ham and the answers in Genesis. You know, great stuff. You know, of course, once you get to the plan of salvation, beware. But, you know, build that ark and so forth. That's just great stuff. And, you know, there's a DVD that we have. Church has got a copy talking about is Genesis history, and of course it is. And, you know, they start that thing out. You're walking with a man, and he looks like he's in a mini Grand Canyon. And he says, you know, me and my brother and uncles and stuff, we used to ride our horses in all these green, lush fields here among these trees. You're going like, where do you think you're standing? Well, he's standing where they used to do that, but it was after Mount St. Helens blew. And so look how that changed the geography of that area like that. And then we think of the whole world. Also has a lot of explanations about the plates and stuff and how they all line up. Anyway, number 4, it must be remembered also that we live in a world that's regulated by natural law. It has to. I can't help when I'm watching them goofy reels on YouTube that I watch too much of. When Sully comes up, I got to watch it. Just landing that plane in the Hudson. I think that's the coolest thing ever. But you know what? That's natural law. If you have no thrust and you got a big plane like that, guess what? You ain't going to fly. I mean, you're going down. And so natural laws are there, and aren't we thankful for that? I mean, maybe if you're jumping off a cliff, you ain't real thankful for gravity, but most of us are really glad we're walking around and not flying off out in space, right? And so you have to have those. We base statistics, we base, like those dudes remember, y'all ever watch that movie, what was it, Apollo 13 that had all the trouble? Absolutely amazing, those guys. And how could they figure everything out, how much trajectory they needed to get around the moon to give them enough power? Because everything's constant. You know, they knew what gravity was going to do. They knew propulsion. They knew how much it would take to get back. And why is that? Because we have natural laws. And aren't we thankful for those? Number 5, suffering can be beneficial. How's that? Well, if your appendix rupture, you're going to hurt. But it's for a reason, because you're going to know that, okay, I need some help. Suppose we didn't have pain, and think about your clothes catching on fire as a good example. Number 6, it's not true that suffering helps to develop the highest qualities of each man is capable. Is it not true? Excuse me. If there was no suffering, could such traits as patience and bravery and so forth be cultivated? Remember, where there is only sunshine, there is a desert. And boy, isn't that the truth. Suffering and evil, number 7, remind us that this world was never designed to be here forever. Not designed for us to make this the end of it. I mean, that we've got another place to go. And aren't we thankful for that? Notice number 8, finally, that suffering per se is not contrary to the goodness of God. It's revealed by the fact that even Christ was subjected to suffering. And, of course, we're going to look at that not this Sunday night, but the following in chapter 5 of Hebrews. It is clear, therefore, that enough of man's suffering can be explained to negate the atheistic charge that, if God was all-powerful and so forth, he should be able to fix all this. Notice atheism, a system of belief. The atheist frequently attempts to convince himself that he has a totally scientific and rational outlook on life. There's a fellow by the name of John McCarthy who wrote a book, and the book is, I Do Not Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. Because so many things that they have to believe. Notice, number 1, to be an atheist, one must believe that God does not exist. And not that you think he might not, but that you have to know there is no God. And can you know that? How do you know he's not hiding underneath one of those rocks on Mars? You can't know that. Number 2, the atheist must either believe that matter is eternal. The evidence is against it. Even the evolutionist people agree to that. Or he must believe that matter was its own creator, so nothing begat nothing. Number 3, contrary to the law of biogenesis, which says life only comes from life, the atheists believe that life was spontaneously generated, something that's never been repeated not one time, ever, nor will it ever, because nothing can't beget something. Atheists believe that order and design in nature are the results of non-intelligent accidents, which is ridiculous. Atheist believes that the non-conscious evolved the conscience, and the non-moral evolved the moral. It is the nature of man who's in a moral state to do what? If he's just left alone, what's he going to do? Is he going to get better morally, or is he going to degrade? Look at Romans chapter 1, verses 18 and following. He's going to degrade. Got to have a standard, right? We're the standard, yep.
You say that this is the right moral, well, then there's got to be a book somewhere.
Something. Some standard, right? Yep. Once an atheist says something is evil, he's lost his argument. What makes it evil? Notice the despair of unbelief, and we have some pretty notorious ones here. Notice Voltaire was the leading voice of the 18th century French infidelity. He probably did more to destroy the faith in the Bible than any man in relatively modern times. And yet, when he was dying, he said, I wished I had never been born. What a way to go, right? Perhaps one of the greatest women of science, Marie Curie, who, by the way, helped, she discovered, her and her husband, radium. And she died, by the way, as a result of exposure to it. I guess they didn't really realize what exactly they'd gotten into. And notice it said she wrote, Madame Curie was expecting her second child. Eve wrote, it seemed that she no longer loved anything. She said, why am I bringing this creature into the world? That's just... Robert Ingersoll, some of that name probably stands out a little bit more than maybe some of these others. He says, on the mistakes of Moses, wrote a book. Once wrote, I am afraid of the land of the shadows the dim. Beyond is filled with frightful shapes or appears perfectly empty, which is still more frightful. I can understand if you didn't think there was something on the other side that was good. British agnostic Bertrand Russell depressingly declared, the life of man is a long march through the night, surrounded by invisible foes, tortured by weariness and pain, towards a goal that few can hope to reach, and where none may tarry long. How much better to live in the life of faith, whereby one may approach death with a disposition of courage and peace. The Lord's my shepherd. You know, he's prepared a table for me. Dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Notice real quick, you've got an atheist. What does an atheist believe? He confidently does what? Denies the existence of God. Said it can't happen. A deist, remember, he's the one that kind of thinks God wound it up and let it go. Asserts that deity has no contact with man. That's why Jefferson's Bible stops when they roll the stone in front of the door. Agnostic, what does he do? I don't know. I don't think there's enough to prove it one way or the other, so that'd be A, excuse me. And then the skeptic, I just don't believe it. He just doubts that God exists. Notice evolutionist George G. Simpson asserted that man is his own what? Master, and that he can and must decide his own. Number 2, love allows for what? Yeah. Yeah. I think he means on this side of the rock, right? Yeah, he's got to be. Yeah. Love allows freedom of choice. Number 3, many scholars believe that the what? Noahic flood, right? A parent who refuses to exercise discipline with may be planting the seeds of unbelief. The universal tendency of man to be religious. B, reveals the human need to believe in God. The Greek philosopher who felt that the problem of evil argued against an all-powerful God was Epicurus. And no, it's not a restaurant on Ringo Road, even though it is. Okay. Number 3, Huxley argued for atheism. For which reason? Yeah, sexual. And which German philosopher greatly influenced Adolf Hitler? That's pretty easy, wasn't it? How many of those names look German, you know? But there was Nietzsche. Nietzsche was crazy, boy. Real quick, biblical reference for the following. They refused to have God in their knowledge. Romans 1:28. The fool said in his heart, there is no God. Psalms 14:1. For in him we live and move and have our being. Paul's on a big hill, right? Where's he preaching? Mars Hill, and that's Acts 17:28. Through one man's sin entered into the world, and death through sin. I skipped one, didn't I? Excuse me. How unsearchable are his judgments and his ways past tracing out. Romans 11:23, same book, next quote, Romans 5:12. And then number 6, it is better to take refuge in Jehovah than to put confidence in man. Where would we find that record? Psalms 118:8. Great, good job. We'll start with lesson 2, which if y'all knew how much trouble I had trying to get that thing to you tonight, you'd understand why you don't have it. But anyway, got to start putting stuff on a flash drive and quit counting on a cloud. Okay. Any questions over anything we covered? That's a lot of stuff. Next week we'll get a little bit more into the existence of God. All right, let's have a prayer together. Rick, would you be so kind? Well, this was a day, wasn't it?